Today I ducked up by accidentally caressing a parent of a child in my class. This happened a couple months ago, but I ran into my former boss today and she informed me that she still watches the video footage of my duck up whenever she needs a good laugh. For the past 5 years I've worked in childcare with primarily 1- and 2-year-olds. I'm very affectionate and am known to spoil the kids by holding them and cuddling them all day. I often have multiple toddlers coming to me needing to be consoled at the same time, so I've gotten very good at multitasking. One day, this little boy named Luke was getting picked up by his dad early. It was snack time and Luke was not happy about having to leave and have his snack taken away from him. I took the screaming Luke and set him on the edge of the half-door counter thing in front of his dad. His dad put an arm around him and bent over to sign him out. Luke was still crying loudly, so I reached out my hand to smooth his hair back and touch his cheek. At the same time as I'm doing this, another little boy starts crying my name because he's just fallen down, so I turn around a little bit to face the other child. At this point, I'm still caressing Luke's face almost subconsciously while also kneeling down to talk to the other boy that's crying. After several moments of touching Luke's face, I realize that it's surprisingly hairy and then realize that he's a baby and shouldn't have a hairy face. My hand freezes and I slowly turn my head to see that not only am I face to face with Luke's dad, because I was kneeling and he was bent over the door signing Luke out, but that I also have my hand on his face instead of Luke's. I sat there shocked for several seconds before I realized that he had the biggest grin on his face, and it finally clicked in my brain that I should move my hand. I stood up and immediately started apologizing and trying to explain myself. He just chuckled and said, "Don't be. Your hands are very soft and I do enjoy being pet." The thing about Luke's dad is that he is one of the most stunningly beautiful men to walk this earth. All the women I worked with had crushes on him and I'm pretty sure he knew it. He is also very charming and sometimes flirty, but not in a creepy, inappropriate way. So when he said this to me, my jaw dropped and my face felt like it was about to burst into flames from how much I was blushing. He saw my face, let out a big belly laugh, and said, "Relax. I'm just messing with you. It's okay, really." He then winked at me before chuckling some more and leaving with Luke. A couple minutes later, I hear some roaring laughter coming from the director's office. My director came down the hall cackling and asking who wanted to see me make a move on Luke's dad. Of course, by the end of the day everyone had seen the video of my duck up. The next day, Luke's mom came into the room and said, "I heard you made a move on my husband yesterday," and then erupted into laughter. Apparently he called her as soon as he left to tell her all about what I had done. When my director saw that Luke's mom was there, she called us into her office to watch the video together. It's even more embarrassing watching it happen because of how absurdly long I was touching his face. Luckily, Luke's mom found the whole thing hilarious and hugged me and laughed the whole time we watched the video. The rest of the time I worked there I was teased about what I'd done. And apparently my director still watches the video and even shows some of the new employees. It is quite funny now but was super embarrassing in the moment.
Today I ducked up by taking Viagra at the wrong time. So, a little context for the scene. It was a friend's birthday, we planned to watch a football/soccer game and then play a game of poker afterwards. We started out in a pub at midday, had a few pints and got merry, then walked to the game with a couple of beers each. When we were there more drinking ensued before the game. After the game we had a miniature pub crawl on the way back to my house. We all played poker, had a good laugh and got progressively more drunk as the night went on. We were all pretty drunk by this point, and also we had been puffing the devil's lettuce for most of the evening too. Everyone decided to go out for a few drinks to finish the night off. My girlfriend and I joined in as we had a good buzz going and didn't want to kill it. This was good fun. We all had a great night and decided to go home. Up until now, this was one of the better nights out I've had in a long time. My girlfriend and I got home and I could sense we were going to get it on a bit later. And I had been given a Viagra by a friend months before, which I just kept because I didn't really rely on that sort of thing at all. Now, we had been drinking heavily, I'd been chuffing jazz cabbage like I was in Amsterdam, and also had a couple of nose beers for good measure. So all in all I was pretty damn inebriated. I came to the conclusion it would be a good idea to pop my little blue friend. We were both as inebriated as each other and were a little shaky on our legs. We were both on different sofas and I beckoned her over onto my sofa as it was the bigger one. She rolled off the sofa and landed on a pint glass which smashed and gashed her open with a laceration about 4 inches long and down to the bone deep. It was wide open and pissing blood out. At this point it all became very sobering, for me, luckily not for her though. I quickly realized that I needed to get her up to the hospital. So I dialed an ambulance, tidied up, got her dressed, and hoped the little blue bastard wouldn't do anything. And it didn't. For a while. We got up to a busy A&D department and shortly after that it started to kick in. With full effect. I was sat in A&D with an absolute rod in my pants, unable to really move or do anything, unable to adjust myself properly because of all the people around, and it was bloody horrible. It lasted for about 2 hours until it became painful. I was in a bad way and I had to do something about it. And thank the Lord that her parents were able to come and tag in to look after her at the hospital. After a few hours sitting in a hospital with an embarrassing boner which had gotten to the point of pain and having not slept all night, it was now about 10 a.m. the following day. I just wanted to get home, relieve myself and get some shut-eye. And that's precisely what I did. It helped for a little while but didn't really solve the problem entirely. But the pain had gone and I got to sleep soundly. All the way to the hospital I knew it would be a good story, and that was my solace for the impending tentpole I knew was going to involuntarily pitch itself in my boxers. Today I ducked up by making my best friend's house smell like my ass for years. Once, many years ago, I was a young preteen boy at my best friend's house. It was an old house, which had central air ducts in the floor instead of the ceiling. It was a lovely, strange house, with some rooms seeming too small for use and others having no conceivable use at all. It had a root cellar. It had a conical iron staircase. It had terribly small bathrooms. I had to poo, like real bad. I used their guest toilet, and dropped what was without any doubt the largest single turd up till that point in my life, and which would remain so for nearly another decade. It was so big that it stood several inches out of the water, supported only by its own structure jammed into the S-bend. It was so damn long. My diet at the time consisted mostly of corn dogs and peanut butter sandwiches, as is the way of many preteen boys, and as well as being long the turd was dense and would prove surprisingly impervious to toilet water. At first I was, quite naturally, absurdly proud. I made this. For the first time in my life, but not the last, I legitimately considered going to go get somebody to look at it, just to share in the wonder. Instead, I flushed, and thus came to experience for the very first time in my life, but again not the last, that specific horror which rises with the toilet water. Panic set in, and I began to hop from foot to foot in anticipation of the water spilling over the rim, but thankfully this particular toilet's maker had love for us all and had designed the bowl to hold slightly more than a full tank full of water, and the fill stopped just shy of the rim. I then did the natural and courteous thing, and I grabbed the plunger and went to work hiding the shame of my prideful poo. This is where the Chekhov's gun issue of the diet comes into play, though, and instead of being able to break up and force the turd through, it compacted into the S-bend like a foul cement. The plunger developed a thicker and thicker coating. I was not so much clearing a plugged toilet as I was playing the part of a fecal warlock, a mud mage if you will, brewing a cauldron full of shit soup. Small particles began to break free and steep into the water, which turned more and more opaque. The panic had taken hold of me now, and it would walk me carefully onto the stage to enact the final part of this tragedy, this disaster of Freudian proportions. Being a shy boy in somebody else's home, going through the early stages of body insecurity that comes with the onset of pubescence, and having tried all of the methods life had taught me for coping with this situation, my brain reset itself and told me, well, if at first you don't succeed, try again. So I did. I entered a feedback loop and started at stage 1. And flushed the toilet. Immediately, before the handle of the flush even fully engaged, I knew I had made the mistake of my young life, but it was already too late. I felt through the handle the internal mechanisms lift against the pressure of the water, heard the rush of gravity-assisted water, and looked down at the already full brown bowl just in time to register a moment of stillness. Perhaps the toilet was designed in such a manner so that such events could not happen? I was young and inexperienced, and so much of how the world worked was a mystery to me, that in that moment I felt hope. Hope born of the trust that the adults who run the world knew what they were doing, and was safe in their hands. They had thought of this, obviously, because how could they not have known this problem could occur and then taken steps to ensure it couldn't happen? Then the water began to rise. In the moment that the dark brown liquid crested the rim, as it began to flow down towards the floor of the small half bath, My childish innocence, and trust for the system my forebears had built, was lost. Life was chaos, and any idea that there may be a plan for us, celestial or human or otherwise, was a lie. Time slowed with the combined existential traumas, and the memory of the shit water hitting the floor and beginning to spread still remains one of my most vivid and crystalline memories, decades later. I didn't scream, or yell, or run. I stood there, transfixed as my own mess turned into a much, much larger problem. As it spread across the small floor, under the door leading to the hall, and instantly dyed the carpet showing underneath. The water level, having hit resistance, then began to rise. I felt it seeping into my shoes and socks. I could sense the smell of it rising from the level of offensive but acceptable BM to that of an open sewer. And then, for the first time, I noticed the vent. Chekhov's other gun then fired, and I settled my vision on the floor AC vent. Just in time to witness the water sweep over the minor levee of its sides and create, for a few brief and darkly beautiful moments, the feature forever remembered by me but never spoken aloud, as Wonka's chocolate waterfall. I then finally made a noise, not remembered as a sound but as a spasm of my lungs and vocal cords. I made the noise with my spinal column, with the sudden tension in my quads and shoulders which raised me on my toes and outstretched my arms, all outside of the means of concision volition. I wailed like a mother hyena watching a lion begin to charge her pups. It wasn't a human sound. I wasn't a human being. I was an entity of filth and shame and worry and fear and longing for a quick and sudden death. That is my final, lasting memory of the event. The sound and the dread. The aftermath of it all is lost to me. I know that my friend arrived first, and I had just a moment to register his disgust before his parents arrived. It all got cleaned up. The carpet stain came out and there was no lasting water damage. I was able to smell myself every time I came into their house. On warm days, it rode the cool air. On cold days, it assaulted the heated air. The friendship did not last the trauma, and I haven't seen him since high school.
Today I ducked up by losing a tampon inside my body for 2 months. Back in December around Christmas I went out and had a pretty wild night. I was on my period and that usually means my drinks hit me harder. I was pretty intoxicated by the time I got home. I had sex with my boyfriend and went to sleep. The next day I started thinking. I asked my guy if he remembered me taking out my tampon before sex. He thought so but wasn't sure. I thought nothing of it. I've never forgotten a tampon and I am almost 40. Over the next few weeks I start smelling weird and having weird discharge. My partner and I had begun having unprotected sex to completion regularly. I've only done this with one other partner before. I had a sort of allergy to his semen and developed bacterial vaginosis. BV smells bad and can give you weird discharge. I assumed this was what was happening with me and my boyfriend. That I must just be kinda allergic to semen and maybe shouldn't let my guy come inside of me. So we went back to using condoms. The symptoms persisted and I would occasionally wonder about that night in December. But I would know, right? Another period came and went. If there was something inside of me it would have come out by now or caused enough problems that I had to see a doctor. My symptoms were just a smelly vag and discharge. I thought it was BV. I started thinking I'll go to the doc soon. 2 nights ago I had severe pelvic pain and it freaked me out. But no insurance can make you put things off. Well, I got my period today. The second cycle since that night around Christmas. I went to the restroom to change my tampon and notice a weird feeling. I pull it out and to come out. It smelled like absolute death. I know it was from December because I was using a cheaper brand of tampons at the time that looked different. I am so embarrassed but at the same time relieved I didn't get TSS and I know now why my body felt off. Ladies, trust your instincts if your insides stink. Please don't be mean. I'm embarrassed enough. I mainly made the post BC I didn't see anything when searching for something like this. I am so embarrassed. Today I ducked up by thinking that I was taking a pregnancy test. This happened this morning. I had stayed the night at my boyfriend's dorm, and so we were both crammed on his shitty dorm mattress. The night went by very peaceful. In the morning I woke up, stood up and stretched, and then headed out to the kitchen. I grabbed a glass of water and chugged it, and then checked my period tracker app. The app said I was a couple days late, so I decided to take a pregnancy test. I went to the bathroom, opened up the test, sat down and began to take it. When I looked at the test, the screen was completely distorted. I couldn't read if it was positive or not, so I decided to try another one. I open a new test, sit down, and miraculously, have a lot more pee in me. I start peeing like a madman. It is just flowing out of me onto the stick. It seems never ending. And then suddenly it stops. And I wake up. In my boyfriend's tiny bed. With him sleeping soundly right next to me. A puddle of my piss spreading across the mattress like wildfire. It was on his sheets, comforter, and his shirt that I was wearing. Luckily I was able to wake him and get him to move before it reached him. The level of embarrassment I felt was insane. We took the sheets off and cleaned up, but I didn't have a change of clothes, so I had to put on yesterday's dirty clothes and sit in shame. He's been cracking bedwetter jokes all day now and I truly feel like I'll never live this down.
Hey, if you want to see more similar videos like this one on daily basis, definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification to see our tomorrow's even better video.